The data that we should use for the financial reporting and financial analysis of a company should be taken from the general ledger of the company. And this is because general ledger contains the details for all the transactions, even at the date level and sometimes even at the time level as well. So using the general ledger will mean that we can analyze our data, we can prepare the reports for the year, for the quarters, for the months, even for the days, and you can make the like with like comparison for different quarters, for the quarter one in the 2018, quarter one of 2019, and quarter one of 2020. Similarly, you can make the comparison for the month of January for all different years. So I'm just choosing the January and quarter one as an example. The point is you can compare any quarter with a similar quarter, and you can compare any month with a similar month, and even for the days you can prepare a similar analysis. But the point is the data that we should use to prepare such reports should be taken from the GL of the company. Now you can see I have a GL in front of me, and in this GL I have the date, account type, account, and amount. And you can see that for each row I have the account available and the account type available. And this is important for me because if we want to analyze our data using pivot tables, it is important that we have this account and account type available for each row. And it is also important that amount should be in one column. I mean, it should not be split into two by debits and credits. Well, we can work with that as well, but that will be way more difficult. The preferable format will be that the amount should be in one column, converted into positives and negatives rather than the debit and credit. Now you can see this GL is so neat and clean, and it is completely ready for the reporting and analysis. But the problem is when we extract the GL from any accounting system, I mean accounting software or ERP system, this GL will not be as clean as this one. In reality, the GL will be quite messed up. Let me show you one. So this is the type of GL that is usually available from the accounting software or ERP systems. And I extracted this GL from Zero accounting software, but you have extracted from QuickBooks, that is going to be quite the same. And if you extract it from some ERP system, again, that is going to be in quite similar format. So we have to clean this GL into the format that I have just shown you, because in this format that you are seeing right now, I mean this the format that we have extracted from software, with this format the reporting is simply not possible. And this is because there are so many blank rows. You can see there are subtotals that will be messing up all of our workings, and then there are so many blank cells as well. So with such data, the reporting will simply not be possible. So we have to start cleaning this GL. And since the GL is always going to be in very similar format, the steps that we are going to use will be quite the same no matter from where your data is getting extracted. Now I hope that you will be preparing your reports quite frequently, like daily or weekly or monthly, with the new data getting updated as the time move forward. So this will be quite a repetitive task. So this should be an ideal candidate for automation, and all the steps that we are going to do can simply be automated using a macro. So if you don't understand the macro, you can simply skip this part for now, and you can keep watching the lecture for the remaining part. Now, as I will be doing some unnecessary steps here just for the purpose of explanation, I will not be recording the macro. I will simply keep moving without macro. And let us start transforming this data into a form that can be used for analytics. So the first thing that we need to do, you can see here these cells have been merged together. And if I try to select any column here, it will simply select all the data. And I don't know how many cells have been merged together even towards the end. So the first thing that I want to do is to unmerge cells in my data. For that, I will press Ctrl A to copy all my sheet, to select all my sheet, and I will go to Home tab and I will say please click on this drop down and unmerge cells. and now you can see that all of these cells have been separate, and if I like to select a column, I can easily do that. Now the next task is, first of all, let us delete these top rows. These are not needed anymore, and let us also delete all the unnecessary columns. So all the columns that are not required to you for the reporting purpose, you can delete them. In my case, I don't need type or transaction details or the reference, so I will delete all of them. I don't even need this VAT column, so I'm going to delete this one as well. So I have deleted all the unnecessary columns, but of course, if you need any of them, you won't delete that. And now I will select the complete sheet again and double click here to make sure that my columns are properly aligned. Okay, the next after that, we are going to do a very important step, and that step is, let me demonstrate you the problem first. So if I apply the filter here, and we can do that by pressing Alt-A-T. If I apply the filter and I click on this drop down, you can see that this is not giving me any data at all. And let me tell you the reason. The reason is there is a blank row after that. And when there is a blank row, Excel will a lot of tools in Excel will simply not work, and it is considered that there is no further data that is available. And there are so many blank rows. If I scroll down, you can see there are so many blank rows. So I need to find a smarter way to get rid of these blank rows. And for that, the easiest way is let us add a new column here. And now once added, let us go towards the end of the data. For that, I will press Control down arrow, and now I will go to the next column and I'll press Control upward arrow, and now you can see I am towards the end of the data. I'll press anything in this column. I'm pressing an X. You can put anything, and I will copy this cell now, and I will press Control Shift upward arrow, and I will press Control V to paste. And now this column is this column has no blanks at all. And the benefit of doing that will be, if I go to this column now and I press, I open this filter, you can see I have my data now, and you can see I have all the cells available in if they were in text or they were in date or they were in blanks, all of those cells are available. So that is the benefit of adding this column here. Now let us do the next part, and the next part is I want to delete all the cells where there are blanks. So I will unselect everything. I will go to the end and I will select blanks. I will press OK, and now you can see that there are few cells where there are no date available. So these are basically the totals of the data. So I will select all of these rows and I will press Control minus, and you can see all of that data has been deleted. Let us open the filter and let us apply the filter again, and let us see what else can we delete. So I don't want to delete the dates. I don't want to delete these account headings for now, but we can delete some other parts. For example, this total, we can delete the total as well, because these are the subtotals that are no more needed. So I will go back again here and I will select total, and we can select this total line as well. Other than that, there is one thing that is quite unusual. You can see this table 4651. So let us see what is that. And these are also basically the totals of all of those transactions. So we can delete these one as well. So let us press Control minus, and all of that has also been deleted. And now the next task is to repeat this account payable for all the rows for this for all the transactions that are applicable to this account. So let me explain you what I mean. So all the transactions that are appearing here basically relate to this account payable. So this is basically the ledger for account payable. If you scroll down from here, we have account receivable. So we have to find a way to repeat this account payable for all of these rows. And for that, what we can do is, first of all, let us apply the filter and let us uncheck the rows which are dates. So I will simply uncheck these three columns. These are the dates, and you can see all of others, which are basically account titles, are selected, and I will press OK. And now I will copy these cells here. You will see in a minute that why I'm doing that. I will press equal sign and I will refer the cell. And now you can see we have this account payable available here. I will copy this as formula. I will select all of these cells below, And rather than pasting it straight away, I will do a smart step, and that step is I will press Ctrl G on my keyboard, and I will go to a special dialog box. I will press on a special now, and I will say click on visible cells only and press OK. And now if I paste my data here, what will happen is all the rows which are hidden, my formula will not be copy pasted there. So only my copy paste will only work in the rows that are visible here. Let us press Ctrl V, and you can see that now we have the account title in all of these rows as well. Now I will remove this filter, and now we have the complete data again. And the next task that I want to do now is to repeat this account payable for all the rows that are available there. So all the rows that are available here, this should be repeated, but only up to this point. After that, account receivable should be repeated for all of these transactions, and after that, for these transactions, advertising and marketing should be repeated. Now of course, if I start to do it manually, and if there are thousands of records, that is going to take a lot of time. So we have to use a smarter way, and that smarter way is, let us simply paste this upper cell in this particular cell. So I'm in cell E3, and I will copy, I will say please bring the data that is in cell E2. I'll press enter, and now I will copy this cell. I will select the complete column, and now I will simply not I will not simply paste it here right like that. I will again press Ctrl G, and I will go to special, and I will say pick blanks, and that is basically that will do something magical. So I will press OK now, and now I will press Ctrl V, and you can see that it has copy pasted my data here. But if you scroll down, you will see something magical happening here. So when when the data has changed, when the account receivable is there, my system has not copy pasted my formula that I was just pasting, and then below that it has again copy pasted my formula that is please bring the cell above, that is account receivable. So if you scroll down, you will see that again, as the account has changed, my system has again not copy pasted this formula here, rather it has copy pasted this one here to the cell moving onwards. So that was the basically magic of blanks, that copy pasted only work for the blanks. Okay, so after that, the next step should be to give a title to this particular column. So I will call this account, and the next step is to remove the formulas from this complete column, and the easiest method is simply copy the complete column, Ctrl C to copy, and now paste it as values, and that should be Alt E as V. And you can see that now if I press F2 on any of this cell, you can see these are basically now values and not the formulas. Now after that, now that we have account available for each row of the transaction, I don't need these headings anymore, and the easiest method of deleting will be again apply the filter and open that, and unselect the dates so that you have all these headings selected, even including the blanks, and press OK. And now you can delete all of these rows, and now please press the Alt AT, and now you have the data that is neat and clean. You have dates, and then you have the debit and credit, and then you have account, and finally we don't need this column A anymore, because now the date column is also, all the values are consecutive, so we don't need this column A anymore. So I will delete that one as well. Now all of my data has been cleaned, but one problem remains, and that problem is the values or the amount is still in debit and credit column, and it will be quite difficult to work in two columns when when we have to calculate the ratios, etc. So I want to bring that in one column, in one amount column, in positives and negative values. Now a debit is not positive and a credit is not negative. This basically changes as the account type change. So for asset, a debit is a positive value, and for asset, a credit is a negative value. That is applicable for asset, but for liabilities the rules will be different, because that is the opposite side of the balance sheet. So in liabilities, a credit will be a positive value because that is increasing the liabilities. So I cannot simply, say plus for this and minus for this. I have to use some intelligence, and for that, we have to distinguish between the account type and apply the rule accordingly. So the first thing I want is I want to have a unique list of all the accounts that are available here, and you can of course copy paste this column and then remove duplicate, or an easy, even better way would be to apply a pivot table on the new worksheet. And then on that new worksheet, I will simply drag down the account, and it has now shown me all the unique accounts that are available in my data. And I will simply remove the grand total from here so that I can focus on the things that I need to. Okay, so now here is the list of all the GL accounts that we have. The next thing that I want is I want to add a category type for all of these. So the type of the account. So for example, account payable is a liability account, account receivable is an asset account, advertising and marketing is an expense account, audit and accountancy is again an expense account. So I really hope that you must have already a list of all the accounts and their types available in your company. But if you don't have, you will have to complete this effort for one time, and then you can save this file for your future use. But if you have that file already, you can simply apply the VLOOKUP and you can bring this value automatically. So bank fees is expense, bank account is asset account, cleaning is expense account, computer equipment is asset, consulting is expense, entertainment is expense, general expense is expense, historical adjustment will be expense, inventory will be asset account, heating lighting will be expenses, motor vehicle is expenses, office equipment is asset, other revenue is income, postage is expense, printing and stationery expense, purchase is expense, rent expense, income, expense, and I will call this asset for now. Okay, so now that we have completed our list, you can see we basically can take this data back to our main sheet. So if if I have to find out the account type, the type of the account, I can now simply use the VLOOKUP from this sheet to get this type into all of these rows. And this is because there can be thousands of rows, so I cannot simply keep typing here. So let us use the VLOOKUP and let us bring the account type from here. So 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, so 8 should be the value that I need to bring, and close the bracket. And now you can see that we have successfully brought in that type here in this sheet. Now before I copy paste, let me make this range that we have selected in the other sheet as absolute reference. And now let us simply copy paste or double click, and you can see that our account type has been correctly defined in all of these accounts. Why is that necessary? There are two reasons. One reason is my debit and credit conversion to positive negative will depend on this particular type. And secondly, when we start to draft any reports of P&L balance sheet, this will be very helpful in summarizing the data. Okay, let us go back to my sheet 1 and let me explain all the rules here. So we have multiple types in accounting. One is asset, one is liability, then we have equity, then we have income, and then we have expenses. In all of these accounts, we record the data in debits and credits. So now let us discuss when the debit will be positive and when the credit will be positive. So in the case of assets, when asset increase, we debit it, right? So the debit will be increase will be debit, so I will be recording it as a positive sign. But in case of liability, when the liability increases, when the liability increase, I mean plus, we record it on the credit side. Similarly, when the equity increase, we record it on the credit side. That means that the positive values will fall on the credit side. For income, again, the increase in income is recorded on the positive side. And finally, for expenses, expenses are opposite to income. When expenses increase, they decrease the overall value of the company. So increase in expenses is basically a minus for the overall company, overall wealth of the company. So I will say the increase in expense will be basically a minus here, just because the overall wealth of the company is falling. So I will record the minus sign on the debit side, because an increase in expense is a reduction of the wealth of the company, and that goes on the debit side. Okay, so which also means that positive side will be falling on the credit side. Now let us use the other sign on the opposite side. So in this case, minus is going to be on the credit side, and then minus, and then minus, and then minus. Now I will write a formula to convert debit to credits, debit to positive, and credit to positive according to this rule here. So to demonstrate that, I'm just going to add a demo data here, and first I'm only using the positive values. So I will say 10 here, and 10 here, 10 here, 10 here, and 10 here. So I'm just going to demonstrate that using this demo data, that if my formula, how to define the formula and how it is going to work. So I will say equals if this this cell here, that is cell K7, contains asset. Now I will apply the same formula in all the rows. So I have to define that if it is asset, use this rule, if it is liability, use this rule. So I will say if K7 is assets, what you need to do is that you need to go to this cell here, the debit cell, and the debit cell should be brought in as is, plus now go to credit cell, and if there is a balance in the credit cell, multiply that with -1 so that it becomes negative. Let me repeat that again. So first of all, I mentioned here that whatever I'm going to define, the rule here is only applicable if the cell contains the asset. Okay, and by the way, it should be asset, not assets, because I have written asset here. So I will delete this S, and I will say if K7 equals asset, go to the debit value, and whatever that is, please bring in as is. I mean, if it is positive value, keep it as is, and then go to the credit cell as well, and please bring the value as minus, multiply that with -1. And the benefit of doing that is, I need to check both the cells, debit and credit, both of them. I need to check both of these cells so that, whichever value is available in either column, that comes up. Okay, now if I press enter, first of all, I need to complete the, formula. So just for the sake of completion for this moment, I'm pressing it 0, and I will press enter, close the bracket, and enter. And you can see, it has given me the value as 10. And if I just remove this 10 for a moment and enter 5 there, you can see that this value is now going to that particular cell as a minus value. The conclusion is the debit value will go there as positive, and the credit value will go there as negative for this case where K7 contains asset. Now let me go back, add 10 here, and delete this 5 so that the formula is working the same. So we have just defined the rule for assets, but now let us write the formula in the way that one formula can work for all of the accounts, no matter they are asset or liability or equity or income or expenses, right? So I will delete this part for that, and I will say if the value is false, I mean if K7 is asset, then apply this one. But if the K7 is not asset, then what you should do, then please do another if check, and that if check is go check the cell, and if it says liability, then what you need to do is that you need to bring in this cell, but for this cell we have to make it negative for liability. So I will say multiply that with -1, and then also make sure you add this one so that eventually the data will only be available in one column. So I will say plus this column here, plus P7 cell, and the credit column will eventually be positive, so we don't have to multiply that with minus. So I will press F2 to go back and make sure that all of this statement is in bracket. And now value if false again. So I'm asking Excel to check if K7 is asset, do this. If K7 is liability, do this. Now I will say if K7 equals equity, Then what you need to do is that you need to go there, take this one, but now please make sure that the debit value will be in minus, so I'll multiply that with -1, and I will say plus the credit value as well and add that as is. I'll press F2 to go back, and then I will come back and close the bracket. And now I will say, if K7 is asset, apply this. If K7 is liability, apply this. If K7 is equity, apply this. Now I will say if K7, if K7 equals income, then what you need to do is that you need to go to the debit value first, go to this debit value and apply the minus sign. And if that is, go to the credit column, and if you go to the credit column, then please do not apply the minus sign. So for the positive debit value, it will be making it negative, but for the credit value, it will keep it as is. Okay, so again, I will make sure this complete value is in, brackets. And after that, I will say open another if and go to case 7 and check if this is, expenses this time. Expenses, close the inverted commas, and now write your logic, and the logic is this cell should be multiplied with -1 plus this cell should remain as is. That should be positive value. So now we have to close the bracket for this, 1 time, 2 time, 3, 4, 5. So basically we have started 5 statements, so I need to close the 5 brackets, and I will press enter. And now let us copy and paste this to all the cells below and see if it is working fine for all of them. So you can see that, we have added this 10, 10, 10 only in those columns where the rules were positive. And you can see that in this amount column, all of these values are coming as positive values. Now I'm deleting them, and I will write the values in the negative columns to see if that also works fine. So, in the asset, I will write value in negative. In the liability, I'm writing that on the debit side, negative value comes on debit, 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 and debit. And you can see that, when we have mentioned the values here, in this one credit and this for all of them in debit, you can see that our formula has automatically converted that to the minus sign completely. Okay, so with this small check, we are now confident that our formula is working fine. What I will do is, I will take this formula from here to the next column, but I won't be able to apply that because eventually the cell references are same. Here the type is in column E, and the debit and credit are in column B and C. So what I will do is, I will not copy the complete formula, rather I will copy this part here without the if sign that is mentioned here. So I will copy this one, and I will take you to this one here, and I will, paste here for now. I'm sorry, I just need to go back and, paste again. Okay, and now you can see that we have copied all the part here, but since there is a missing equal sign, Excel has copied it as a statement rather than the formula. The benefit of doing that will be, I will simply replace the cells as needed now. So for example, if I need to apply on this first line here, I will say rather than the K7, please check E2. So now select this column, and I will say please go to Control F and use replace, and I will say replace K7 with cell E2. And similarly, I will replace now all the other cells as well. So O7 was basically the debit value. In this case, this is going to be B2. So I will say replace O7 with B2, replace all. And similarly, I will say now replace P7 with C2. So I will say P7 with C2. Now C2 is this one. I'm sorry, C2. Replace all, and okay. And now this formula has been replaced properly. So what I will simply do is, I will copy the complete text again. I will copy that. I will come to this cell, press F2 to open it, press equal sign, paste the formula, and you can see that now references are working pretty fine. press enter, and here you have the value, and we don't need this one anymore, so delete this. And now just double click here and it will replicate that to the whole column, no matter how many records are there. And you can see that for the liabilities, that is account payable in front of us right now, the credits are coming as a positive value, and the debits are coming as the negative value. Scroll down, let us go to the assets, for example account receivable. You can see that the debits are coming as positive and the credits are coming as negative. However, if we scroll down, you can see that there are some problems that we can notice here. And if you can look at here, in the case of expenses, it has given you an error. It says false. And the problem is, if you go back to the top cell and open your formula, you will see that in our formula we have mentioned it expenses, and then in our type column here it is mentioned as expense. So let us make it expense in our formula as well and press enter. And now let us double click again, and if I can scroll down and go to the same column again, this time you can see that now this formula is working for expenses as well. So that was a small mistake that we have done in defining the the word. So now what we will do is that once we have this debit, this positive and negative column, we don't need this debit and credit column anymore. So if I delete them now, this formula, this column will also stop working, because this is completely referred to column B and C. To get rid of that, what I will do is that I will simply copy all this data, Control C to copy, and I will paste it as values, Alt E as V. And now that we have done it, now you can, if you press F2, you can see that it is no more a formula, it is a simple value. And now if I delete my debit and credit column, it will not affect my amount. And of course I will delete the debit and credit column next, but before that I want to show you that I have the complete data that has been converted to amount, and it is working the same way in reports that we would expect otherwise in debit and credit. And to demonstrate that, I will do a small step, and that step is I will go to insert and I will say insert a pivot table for this range, and I will say please do that on new worksheet, and I will go to sheet 3 here. And now let us bring in the date, not date, sorry. Let us bring in the type here in the filters, and then account here in the rows, and then finally the amount here in the values, and also the debit and credit also in values, so that we can cross compare. Now in the filter, let us select only income and expenses, so that we actually are talking about profit and loss statement. Let us press OK, and now you can see that in the sum of amount we have 14,066, which means that in this column, the amount column, all the income and expenses have been considered, all the positive and negative have been considered, and the net profit is 14,066. But if you look at this one, credits are income and the debits is expenses. If we net these two off, minus the debits that are expenses, we have the same answer that we expect otherwise. So now you could have worked with debit and credit, you will get the same result, and you can work for the same way with this column as well. And of course this one will be easier for us. So I just checked it with income and expenses. You can check with the asset and liability as well, and you will be getting the same answer that we are getting here. Okay, so I will just cancel it for now, and I don't need this sheet. I will delete this sheet now, and let us go back to our general ledger report. And finally, let us delete the debit and credit column, so that we have our data nice and clean, ready for analysis.